Hello, hello, hello!
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to a new show here on VTuber Tabletop called A Round of Table Talk, where we will be psycho and philosophically analyzing the characters from Heralds.
For some reason, I thought you just said we're going to be psycho, and I was like, well, we can do
we're gonna be. Honestly, with the English language, that could be the sentence I just said. Don't mind me. I have the worst voice today. I have the worst allergies ever, and right now the snow is melting, and everything's dying, and then it's all coming back again. So I'm dead right now.
Literally.
Yeah.
I prayed for yesterday, and she's come back.
Yeah. I've come back from the grave. Lucy did some wish magic, and now I'm here. So, oh, by the way, sorry, just a little plug. How is Hopes and Dreams coming? Do you know?
So Hopes and Dreams,
or Hopes and Wishes? Is that what we're calling it?
So Hopes and Dreams is a subclass expansion that Merlin has been working on. I'm not sure if it's up on DM's Guild just yet, but
Hi, I can hop in. I
do
am
know
also
it's in the
here.
drafting. There you go.
It is almost ready for release.
Okay.
Awesome.
There you go. And you guys will be able to see 3 different subclasses, I believe. One of them being the Wish Knight subclass that Lucy currently is. It was something that Merlin and I came up with. It's very cool. I enjoy it very much. I wish I got to show it off last session when we fought a monster. But hopefully we'll see. Lucy will see some action soon, and you guys will be able to witness it.
Yeah, Lucy wasn't really there for that fight, though.
He was going to be if it had reached Dante's turn once more. But that didn't happen, so.
Yeah. Dante pretty much smote that motherfucker.
I think it was actually Matif that did a lot of work that round, actually.
He did a lot of work until Emmis got in the water, and then he was like, well, fuck, I can't do this anymore. Anyway.
And so, yeah. And speaking of Matif, that's who we're going to be talking about today on A Round of Table Talk.
Before we start,
so the way this works, go ahead.
Do you wanna do hashtag plug? Plug ourselves?
Yes. First.
You go first.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name is Usubanda Yume. I play Lucy on Heralds for VTT. You can find me on my YouTube channel under the same name. I also occasionally stream on Twitch every once in a while. And I also do have a Patreon and Ko-fi where you can find some of my publications. One of which is the ongoing release of Lucy's origin stories. Just this past weekend, I released Chapter 3, which goes over Lucy's first day in boot camp. So if you're interested in following the story of Lucifer T. Burns, meeting people who shaped his life quite heavily, go ahead and check it out.
Yeah, and I am Pastel the Snake on Twitch and Twitter. Always be plugging. I play horror game content mostly, so right now we're on Inscription, Playtime, and Security Breach, which I'm very excited to start. I'm actually really excited to say that I will be having a sponsored stream next Wednesday at 6 p.m. CDT, which is Central Daylight Time. And we will be playing Security Breach on that, so that'll be very exciting.
Woo!
Woo! Go ahead and explain it for us.
Who, me?
Yeah, what are we doing today?
Oh, okay. What are we doing
Yeah,
today?
explain my channel to us right now.
Yeah, so today we are doing a new show called A Round of Table Talk, where Pastel and I will go in depth into each of our characters. So today we were talking about Matif Thoro. We'll talk about different things that have happened in the story, and we'll analyze those in philosophical and psychological lenses, and hopefully give some insight onto each character.
Yeah, so I will start with just a basic overview of who Matif is. He is a hard-headed, cynical, kind of selfish character. At least that's where he started, right? He had just come out of this terrible thing that had happened to his ship and his crew, which we will get into, so I'm not gonna touch on that very much. And had come into an adventuring party, not wanting to be an adventurer ever, but after making relationships and really coming close to the people that he has been adventuring with for so long, he's kind of turned into that opposite. Like, he's getting more soft spirited, he's more, not like altruistic, but more like more of a team player. He's becoming a little more optimistic about like who people are and what they can do. So really, like, what I want to talk about today is the human connections and relationships that he has made, and how that has affected him based off of the events that we're going to talk about, and how that really started who he was, but where the party is and where the party's going is going to affect who he becomes, and those are two very different people. So just to talk a little bit about his relationships, I wanted to start with Emeth because I feel it's the strongest one right now, strongest positive one. So I think him and Lucy have a stronger relationship, but it's not as positive. But anyway, so Emeth, he really clicked with her since the first, even the audition episode, the one that, the lost episode, with Emeth.
I never got to see that one.
Oh, it's, you're fine. Don't worry about it. I was a lot different back then. I didn't play the same way that I do now. But because he and Emeth have so much in common, they really started like hitting it off, and there was a big like part in the first episode where we were like, oh, there's a lot of chemistry. Two characters, are they gonna kiss? Are they gonna date? What's going on, right? And then over time, it turned more into like a very strong friendship. And I think that's kind of based around Matif, and his. And I talked a little bit about this in the episode where him and Emeth almost kissed. But Matif is he's not a broken character, but he has gone through a lot in his life, and that means that he is overcoming barriers with his emotional regulation and balance, which means that he porcupines really bad. Porcupining, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, is when you want to be close in a relationship, but you put up all of these defenses because you would rather push somebody away than have someone push you away. So instead of being abandoned by someone, you make it so that the relationship, you are the agent of change to have control over that, right? So he does that in an effect with Emeth because that he has an innate thing about him that makes it so that people get hurt. And that is based off of this crewmate, which he had a crush on right before the slaughtering of everybody, right? And he and this crewmate did make it off the ship, But then certain circumstances happened. They ended up also dying, right? So not only did he lose everybody, but also this person that he cared immensely for, and he didn't know, but also started to care about him back in that way. He lost personally, like on a 1-to-1 level. Oh my God, sorry. Jesus Christ, my throat. So he really has a hard time, like, going past a camaraderie relationship with the people that he's adventuring with right now, especially because he doesn't want to fate the universe, essentially, to accidentally cause something into being by caring, right? And it's very funny because in that big talk he had with Ennis at the end of the episode right before the break, he was talking about how she should overcome her fate, and like that she isn't the person that, you know, her mother said that she was, right? And that she doesn't have to be what, like, this destiny has set out for her, right? But he's also having a hard time overcoming that mentally. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So that's he's a big hypocrite when it comes to that, because he wants his friends to know that they are strong and they can fight and that they can overcome, but he has a really hard time saying that about himself. Just because he's too afraid that if he does start caring, and if he does truly, like, give in to that want to have a real relationship and a real connection with someone, that they will end up, you know, dying. And he doesn't want to feel guilty about something.
Mm-hmm.
Going on to...
So can
yeah.
I chime in a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
So there are two things mainly that I want to focus on based on what you said. So the first thing I want to talk about is the porcupine thing, which to me sounds like an avoidant attachment style. Would that be correct in my definition of avoidant attachment style?
I'm trying to think. It's more like a dependent attachment style.
Really?
Well, dependent, it's more like, and I'm not, diagnosing Matif with anything, because he's not really diagnosable. It's not to an intensity, but I meant dependent personality. I don't know if you know anything about that, but it is an avoidant attachment style. So, dependent personality disorder is when you become attached to a person to the point of hindering that relationship in an attempt to make sure that they do not abandon you.
I see.
So, but you were right. It's an avoidant.
Because I was wondering, and maybe it's just based on his interactions with Lucy, but at least to me, it kind of seemed like he would do these things in order to get them from being too close, so that there wasn't any risk of losing them, because if you're not close to them ever, then you don't risk losing them, essentially.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought, like, his relationship with Lucy was.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a lot of other things as well, but that's kind of how I saw Matif.
I think with Lucy, it's a little bit of a different example, because he feels that Lucy is endangering everybody else. And so as much as he doesn't want to have a relationship, care about Lucy because, you know, Lucy has already been gone once, right? That we know that happened. And, you know, Matif, like, was obviously taken aback by it. Like, he cried. Like, he did care, and he does care about Lucy. But big difference is that he believes Lucy is putting everyone else in danger, and so he keeps Lucy at arm's length because he does, on some level, want Lucy gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I've definitely gotten that feeling.
sorry about that. That's nothing against you, I swear.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, good. Because I don't want you gone. But it's like it's a mama bear kind of protection thing. Like, until you can show me that you put us in danger, that you're not gonna you know, endanger us. I think especially not to get too much into sorry, I read the chat.
We need to add a quotes thing for VTT.
Yes.
I feel like that would be really cool.
Oh god, yeah. That would be funny. And then we put it up on the Twitter so that everyone can see them all. But what was I saying? It was about Lucy.
Mm-hmm. Something about not wanting to go too much into depth into it, and then something.
Oh yeah, because it's another one of the events that I wanted to get into a little bit was the first fight with Lucy. The one with Berna. Berna's character, right? That was Matif, and he still probably hasn't forgiven him for this, even though it all turned out fine. But Matif felt like Lucy picked this stranger over them, and so he feels very betrayed because he feels like you never cared about us. Like, if you cared about us, you would have picked us. But you cared about him instead. And so he holds that as a grudge. Like, really bad.
When we get to that, I have some questions about that.
Okay.
And so can I ask about the second thing before we move on?
Yeah.
And you might go into this later on, but you mentioned that he feels guilty for, like, not only the original incident that kind of shaped him very heavily, but also with some of the relationships that he has now. Are you going to go into that later, or can we talk a little bit about it now?
Can you rephrase the question? Because I think I know what you're talking about. To make sure.
So you mentioned, and I forget the exact context of it. Should have written it down. But you mentioned that he feels some guilt when it comes to his old crew and what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
Was that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so could you talk a little bit about why he feels guilty? Like, does he feel at fault? Does he feel responsible that maybe he can do something, you know, even afterwards? Like, what is the guilt stemming from?
I think many people are accustomed to this idea of survivor's guilt, right? So the belief that someone should not have lived through an experience that the other people in that experience should have lived and that they should not have. So he has a lot of survivor's guilt around all of that. That, you know, why did he get to survive when all of these other people were like his captain, like better than him, like who had more to live for than he did, right? why did he have to be the one to get out of the situation? Not only that, but also he is a very strong sorcerer, even at level 1. Like, in this kind of setting, in this world, right? And Merlin can correct me if I'm wrong, but usually in 5e, even first level characters are pretty strong in comparison to like other, like just normal NPCs. And him being a strong sorcerer, a strong storm sorcerer too, something that's not very common, that is really helpful, especially in seafaring like setting. He believes that he could have done something if he was not first of all, if he was stronger, but second of all, if he didn't make a mistake. And he didn't make like a big mistake. Like, I'm not saying, like, I will go into detail with it when we talk about it, but he just has this innate feeling that there was something he could have done and he doesn't know what it was. But he could have done something and everyone would have. You know what I mean? And that's just another part of Survivor's Guild, is the, you know, I could have done something. But in normal circumstances, more than likely you couldn't have. These situations just happen, and they're terrible, right? That people have to go through them. But like, there's nothing you could have done.
Let's see. That's all I wanted to ask about.
Okay. I want to go to Dante. Dante is another strong, positive relationship that Matif has. It's not as strong as Emma. But Dante is, like... I know that he's very dangerous, but the way that Dante acts, Matif kind of takes him in as a little brother, almost. Like, this is someone to protect. Like, this is someone who he sees as a very person, and in a roleplay sense, in a combat sense, I know that Dante can fine, and I'm not gonna put him in that situation because I know that he has killed things before, and that he is a strong warlock and sorcerer, and I don't need to hold his hand through. But in a more roleplay sense, it becomes that Matif wants to take care of Dante because he understands that Dante is in a very large world. Like, the world is big and scary, and Dante is scared of it, and he wants to be there to be the pat on the shoulder that says everything.
Interesting.
That brings us to Lucy, who is the strong negative influence. We kind of already talked about the big points I wanted to get to with Lucy. But I think Matif is a lot... he finds it a lot easier to hold grudges against Lucy because Lucy has done things in the past that he still holds grudges about. So, like, even the small things, like, and something that you could not have done anything about. So, like, he holds a grudge that you were not there with Stone Giant taking us out. When Emma felt like she had to jump ship, you weren't there for us. Like, you have abandoned us. And I think that's gonna come up in the next session, or maybe 2, where we're probably gonna have another pretty fight. Because sorry about that. Spoilers.
I do want to jump in. I love that. BT dubs, we are gonna fight.
We are gonna fight. Fist will be blown. Okay? Fist will be blown. Jesus Christ. Oh my god, that's not what I meant.
I think that'll be interesting though, because usually it's me saying, hey, Lucy's probably gonna fight Matif, but now it's turned around in a way, and you're like, hey, Matif's gonna fight Lucy. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think
go on.
a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about right now is going up, so that's why I don't feel bad giving it up a little bit early, because he's going to say, like, you do not care about us, you have left us, you need to go. You are not doing anything for us. And again, that is not me telling you, Yume, to leave. Like, that is just the character. I swear to God, I love you so much. Please don't go. And Lucy doesn't have to. And I feel like there's going to be a fun back and forth there. But I am very excited. So I don't want to get too much into that before it happens. But I'm very excited about that.
Mm-hmm. And so can we go a little bit more in depth into this?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this was intended, but when they first met, were you expecting it to be, I guess, as contentious as it was?
I think the first impression that I had was that you were two-faced and that you used fancy words to pretend like you were smarter than you. That was not me, but Matif. Again, very, very important to have a out-of-character, in-character difference. But I didn't think it was going to get as bad as it did. Because, again, Matif was like, I don't care about any of these people, right? But it's turned not into a, oh, you're a pompous asshole. It's turned more into, you are actually, like, a problem.
And so, to kind of piggyback off of that, with a lot of the other characters in the VTT group, to me it seems like Matif has at least some influence in like their actions and thoughts. Like Matif usually gives that to them, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I see what you're saying." But when it comes to Lucy, he doesn't. To me, it doesn't seem like he really has any control over him. And so I'm wondering, is that one of the reasons that he is like wary of him or might not like him as much? Is because he feels like he really can't control Lucy and what he's doing. And like, if he wants to leave, then he just can get up and leave and do his own thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's another big thing is control, right? I think that because Lucy is so bold in his personality, it makes it harder for Matif to feel like he can weasel himself in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And like, Matif isn't an incredibly manipulative character, but because of all these different things, I mean, and we all, to an extent, manipulate others' behavior to get what we need in a relationship. But I feel like he does do it to an extent that is a little bit more than the normal person, than the average person. He's not a good guy, like, he's a good guy, like, he's chaotic good, right? He does things for the betterment of, like, whatever, right? And he does that because he wants to feel like he has a reason to live, right? That he had a reason to live through that experience that he, right? And that's a survivor thing that happens. And he finds that in not like destiny, right? Because he's working against his fate. He doesn't like the idea that he's stuck path, right? Because then it feels like, oh, the only reason that I lived through that, it's because some other deity, whatever, has controlled what I have. But he does feel like he needs to give back to feel like he has a, and that is to the detriment of himself.
And kind of going over Matif's general role in the party. Like, what would you describe it as? Like, is he like the big brother of everyone, where he's kind of just watching over everyone, making sure everyone's okay? Like, what do you see his role in the party as?
That's a good question.
'Cause sometimes it seems like he's like the leader. Sometimes it seems like sometimes he's more supporting. But I guess if you had to put it onto one, what do you think it would be?
I think Big Brother is a pretty good descriptor there. Because he does want to protect, and like we talked about that with Dante a little bit. But he also doesn't unconditionally do. Like, I'd say like a father would like unconditionally do that, but I'd say he's more like a brother, because there are things that you can do that would make it so that I no longer like would do that for you. I would no longer protect you. I would no longer like whatever.
Interesting. Are you going to go over Rowan at all?
Yes, I was. I have Rowan, and then Amish.
Great.
So Rowan, I know that hasn't had experiences, but I do think that the big one is when she went to go grab that, what was it, a necklace or a bracelet?
I believe it was a necklace.
Yeah, and she dove for it, right? And she almost got eaten. Because it got eaten by something in the water, I'm not sure. The pumpkin. Okay. And she came up, and Matif had that big, like, blow up, right? Like, you idiot, like, why would you do that? You're sure, right? And I think that shows a little bit about his character growth, because normally he would only act that way towards Lucy if Lucy had put if he had put people that he already has really intense relationships with in danger. But Rowan was someone that he hasn't really gotten to know, like have a good connection with yet, and still Rowan, he cares about her because he sees the potential there for her to mesh well with the group, right? That she can continue adventuring with us, and so I want to create that relationship, right? Which means that he is starting to feel that way towards other people, like strangers, right? Like he cares about strangers and if they live or die, which was something that he didn't really care about in the beginning. So I think that showed a lot of character growth in that moment. I don't have much else to say about Rowan, just because it's so new.
Yeah, and so if I could ask something about what you said. So you had mentioned that Matif saw potential for Rowan in the group. And when I heard that, it kind of highlighted a little bit into about Matif's thinking, is that he's not necessarily thinking only about himself, but what's best for the group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to ask is, has he like when did he start thinking about what's best for the group, and where is he judging what's best for the group? Like, what does he think the group is trying to do, essentially, or what
So
the group's goal
when?
is?
Oh, that's a good question.
Kind of like two different questions. Like, when did he start thinking in terms of the group, and where is he getting his idea of what's best for the group?
When is a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can tell you that it did happen pretty early on. Before we went to get the wine. Because I remember there was a time when we were getting the wine good enough. And Matif in the beginning would not have taken like as an insult. Well, he would have taken it as an insult about it, and I immediately in my head went, I want Egga's house so bad.
You're cutting in and out a little bit, just saying.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Let me make sure that my mic is fine. How's that?
Sounds good for now, but I'll let you know.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hear the part where I wanted Egga's house?
I didn't get who, because right when you said
Oh.
who it was, it like came out.
There was one of the winery guys that like
Oh, the rich guy.
yeah. And I wanted to egg his house so bad. And that showed a little bit of him, like he didn't care about the party at that point. Like if they'd kicked him out, he would have been like super upset about it, but now he would. But at the time it was like you can slight me, and that's fine, and I'll get over it. But you slight this little halfling boy, and I will egg your. You know what I mean? So I can tell you that it was starting then. I don't think it fully developed at that point. But there was definitely a gradual progression into caring about the party more than himself. And where does he think the party's going? I think it's less about where the party's going and more about the I think he would put the physical safety of anyone in the party over over anything. Not over anything else. I think there are still certain things that he feels like he needs to do or wants to do. Like in the battle that we just had with that stone giant, he ended up freezing wood in the ground instead of running away with everybody, right? Or helping Dante get rid of the stone giant. And that was because first of all, that's a really strong memory of his, right? He's done hundreds of times during battles and stuff, is gone and frozen the bottom of the ship to make sure that they can go back to shore with, and all get there safely. But that was him trying to, for the betterment of everybody in the situation, instead of just one person. So like he could have held with Dante, right? And probably the same outcome. He would have gone down under the ship, create water or whatever, or shape water, and everything would have still been fine, right? But he instead decided, okay, this will help the most people right now that I care about, instead of taking the last kill or. So I think the physical safety of everybody is important, but I think also like what will do the most good is also important.
And so to piggyback off that again, does the group's physical safety, does that trump over keeping the group together in terms of I guess, bonds or relationships.
I think he would break a relationship with someone in order to help them. And I think that really shows in the where like he was like, I will be the guy if that means that you are safe. Right? And he didn't say that's Rowan, he said that to but he was like, I will take on and be the asshole if that means that you get to see, that you get to see tomorrow because you weren't eaten by a kraken.
But also to kind of not really flip it, but to put it from another perspective, say if Dante, Emmett, or Lucy did something that endangered the group to a high enough point, would Matif, for example, like kick them out in order to keep the rest of the group safe?
Lucy, yes. That one's not hard. With Emmett and Dante, I think that would be really tricky. I think that would definitely be a personal moral conflict you would have to go through. And I think it's very situational. Like, if Dante just wanted to be like, oh, well, I want to go on this quest, but it's going to be harrowing, right? Then it's like, okay, well, we go on a bunch of quests, they're all harrowing, it's fine, right? But if it was like Emmett, like, being like, oh, I'm secretly talking behind your back, and it's gonna get us all in trouble, and, whatever, I think it would come to, like, and she was unwilling to, right, let's say that, I think it would have to come to a ultimatum, pick somebody else over them. Matif would be like, he would struggle with it a lot, but in his head, he would, do you know what cognitive dissonance is?
I believe it's when your expectations of yourself don't match? Or is it something else? You can
it's when you convince yourself that something was okay, even though it's against your so like cheating on a test, right? If it goes against what you personally believe to be okay, your cognitive dissonance will tell you, oh, but I really needed that A. Or like, oh, but if I didn't do it, something bad would have happened, right? So cognitive dissonance is just convincing yourself that your actions are justified. And I think that's what Matif would have to go through, is that cognitive dissonance of what I did was right, or they chose for themselves. Yeah.
And so, not to get too big picture, but Matif, like you mentioned, he's looking out for the group in his own way, right? But as of the latest episodes, it's been more and more, I guess, obvious that although we're in a group, everyone has their own things to deal with, and everyone has their own timeline, as evident with Dante and his black athlete's foot, Emmett and her origin, Lucy and his myriad of things. And so how is he going to deal with all these people, having urgency and their own agendas, and obviously Matif with his own? How do you think he's going to react to that? And will it cause him to be even more like protective of the group? Or what do you say to that?
I think that's going to be another one of his like pressing internal conflicts, because he wants everyone to together, and if it becomes I have to choose between whether I don't know, Emmett gets something or Dante gets something, like that's not a choice he wants to make, right? That's like saying who's your favorite child, right? Like, you never want to pick that. But if that's something that it has to come down to, I think that he has the strength of will to make that decision based off of things that he already believes are important to him. So it would be less about who, like, what theirs are. If it came down to it, he would pick from what he believes is. Which is, I know, a little strange. And, like, I know that can sound kind of intuitive to a lot of the stuff I've said already, but he's not a perfect character. Like, no human is going to be unhypocritical and do you know what I'm trying to say? Because I can't find the word.
Yeah.
And
I guess you can talk about, like, when it comes down to it and the decision is hard, like, what is the decision based off of? Is it whatever does the most good? Whatever does the least bad? Like, what is usually the deciding factor when it comes to that decision? Like, is it having friends not dislike you? It's kind of going back to it, and we might go over into it later on, but kind of like when we talked about Bernard's character and Lucy, and how Lucy decided to defend someone although he's a stranger, and Matif was kind of upset that Lucy chose the stranger over the group. Because in my head, I kind of see that as, like, are you going to choose your friends, or are you going to do, like, what you believe is right? Because sometimes they're not always the same, right? So I was wondering, like, when it comes down to it, how does Matif make those hard decisions? Like, what does he base it off of?
Right now, he would base it off of, so, like, let's create a hypothetical example that Merlin's gonna take and use against me, but it's fine. Let's say that taking on...
I am listening.
Let's pretend that taking on the Spirit Walker mantle would put one of the party members in danger, right? Or would put the whole party in danger.
Mm-hmm.
He would pick the party over the Spirit Walker, right? Because even though being the Spirit Walker would do the most good for the world, like, even though it would help out Mulan, who is someone that he knows is important, so doing other really important job to save the world, I don't think that he would be able to look his friends in the eye and say, I would pick the world over you. Like, I think to some extent it is like he would pick the choice that does the least amount of bad, but he will pick the group over pretty much anything else.
And so...
And, like... Oh, you're good.
Go ahead and finish. Okay. Go ahead.
You go.
Okay. So, what you just mentioned reminds me of, like, the railroad problem, right? Where, depending on how you frame it, sometimes people make different decisions. So, in some instances of the railroad problem, you can choose to save people, right? In some ways that you frame it, and in some ways that you frame it, you can choose to kill the least amount of people. And so, going back to the Spirit Walker, let's say this, like, not siding with the Spirit Walker, right? Although it would do a lot of good, he'd still choose the group, right? Even though it does the less amount of good. But what if not choosing the Spirit Walker meant choosing, I guess, evil? where in not choosing the Spirit Walker, the whole world goes to shit.
That's probably what that is, right? Like,
Yeah.
the world is probably better if Matif chooses to be the Spirit Walker, because Mulin also has another. She protects the seal that's holding some horror against the world, right? And so doing both jobs is burning her out, right? And so she's like, I need to do only one, and so I need to take over as my successor, and you are very strong and very, like, capable, and I believe that you could do it, if you put, like, your mind into it and you want, right? But I think the thing is, it's hard to look someone in the eye and say, I'm not gonna pick you, right? You're not important to me, when it's someone that you clearly have shown to you before. And I think that's the hard thing for Matif, is that he cannot look someone in the eye and say, you are not as important to me as, like, saving the world, even though he knows that doing that would be the most good, right? So maybe he's not as chaotic good as I thought. Maybe he's more like chaotic neutral. Because, like, he will pick the world over, you know, his own destiny or his purpose, but he would not pick the world over the people that he cares about.
That's quite interesting. Because does he feel like... Because you mentioned that he can't look them in the eye, right? And I'm wondering if that's strictly, and not maybe totally, but if it's mostly just Matif thinking that in his head. Like, I can't look him in the eye because they'll probably hate me, right? But it could be definitely true that the party members are like, you need to do what you think is best, right? So, yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like, is that a decision that he's making on his own? Like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm betraying you because, you know, I don't want to, I guess, abandon you. Or is he actually taking, you know, their opinions into account, right? Like, you need to do what you think is right. Said from the other party members. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I think it's part of both. Like, like with the first one, I feel like where he's thinking about it in his head, like, he's not worried about, like, it's not a literal looking, figurative, like, I wouldn't be able to, like, I don't know how you worded it. But, like, let's say there's two scenarios, right? In one of them, he has Mulin in front of him, and the whole party is also there, and Mulin is like, you have to pick me, or the world's gonna end, and then party's like, you have to pick us, or we're gonna die, right? And like, Matif is looking at both of them. He would pick the party every single, because they are literally in front of him, and he would never be able to forgive himself if he saw the disappointment on their faces when he didn't them. But in a second scenario, right, where it's just Mulin, they're in the dream, whatever, and Mulin is like, you have to pick me over your party, or the world's going to end. I feel like Matif would have a lot harder time with. I'm even having a hard time with that one.
Merlin's furiously writing.
All right, so what you've told me Oh, okay. Oh god. I keep muting and unmuting myself. So what you've told me is to separate Matif from everyone else. Good to know.
Yeah, maybe I'll keep that one secret in case Merlin's gonna use that one. But I'll have to think about that. But he definitely cares about what they think. Like, he definitely cares about how they perceive him.
And so, if I can present another decision to Matif, and the person who plays Matif. Going back to episode 16, the episode where Lucy dies, say that the crystal had not landed on Emmett's hand, and it instead landed on Matif's hand. And I guess Matif is somewhat aware of, what Lucy has been through. Do you think he would have struggled with bringing him back into a life where obviously he's not exactly happy, where Lucy's not exactly happy? Do you think Matif would have wished him back or let him rest or something else?
So I actually thought about this at the time, and I would not have brought you back, and I'm very sorry, but and I think he was even mad at bringing you back. He not anymore, right? Like, she made the decision; it's fine now. But at the time, it was, and we had just come from Sundaresh, 5 episodes before that. And Sundaresh's wish towards Matif was, I can bring back your entire crew for you, right? You don't have to be the only one. You don't have to be alone. And Matif pushed back against that, because he was like, they wouldn't be them, right? I don't want a facsimile of what I had. I know that anything that you can give me, even if it was truly resurrecting as humans, they would be exactly who they were. He would not change. He would not want to bring them back because he feels like it would be. Does that make sense? I'm gonna repeat myself, but he would feel like it's a facsimile of what they were, right? It's almost disrespectful to say that. Hey,
why he?
Go ahead.
Yeah, can I ask why he would think it's a facsimile or disrespectful to them?
Because, well, first of all, we know that there's an afterlife in this setting, right? It's a little different because we know that the gods exist and we know that there's an afterlife, right? And part of who Matif is knows that things always need to rest, right? So even if they were brought back, I mean, assuming that they remembered everything, were human and weren't at all, right? They still wouldn't be themselves because they wouldn't have gone through what they had, right? It's almost like the portal problem. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Where if you were transported, if we had portals, right? We transport over long distances instantaneously. But on the other side, you would just be made of completely different cells and atoms and all these different things, right? Are you still you, right? And a lot of people,
Theseus, almost, right?
Yeah. And he just feels like it's disrespectful to not let them rest, right? Everyone needs to rest at the end, and so to bring them back is almost saying that like you are not allowed to have that. And I feel like in this setting, I played characters believe that in the afterlife, you are still conscious, like you are still like able to have feelings, and there's that feeling of worry after being resurrected. I know because I did it 3 times. 3 times, motherfucker. This bitch died all the fucking time. And every time he came back, he didn't tell anybody, but he always felt like, I'm never gonna be able to die. I'm never gonna be able to rest. Like, I will always come back. And he had this point in the afterlife, he would worry consistently, when am I gonna be brought back? And there's also that, like, expectation, when am I gonna be brought back? Right? Like, I can't just sit here. And I feel like that kind of brings in, he doesn't want to cause that worry, he doesn't cause that discomfort to people who have lived their life and are now, he assumes, happy on the other side. Plug. Because the other side.
The other side.
Anyway.
Sorry, just to cut in.
Okay.
That interpretation of not being able to rest, right? I think that is very fitting for Lucy.
He is the Revenant now.
Yeah,
He cannot
but I
rest.
do feel like with Pastel's point of not being allowed to rest, you know, and being, I do think that's very fitting for Lucy and his kind of journey. Is as much as pain as Lucy is in, and as much as he wants to rest, I don't think he will be able to. Especially now.
And
Sorry,
he won't.
just wanted to jump in with that.
No, very good.
Oh no, the book on the table, it's talking.
That'd be funny if it starts doing the reactive image on it.
That would be pretty funny. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, that was a very good, a lot of very good points were made. Awesome.
But
so
yeah,
let's continue.
sorry
on
about
to
that.
our
Would not have
argument.
brought you back.
It's all good.
And Amesh is the last one. I think for Amesh, Matif did take on like a almost fatherly role, and when we all thought Amesh died, Matif took that so personally, and he still does to this day. That like Amesh could have died for him, and he like carries that very heavily. But he really did want to be a positive influence for Amesh because, well, when they first met, he was like, okay, this guy is on the wrong, and he should be more serious as an adventurer, take, you know, saving the world or the town, more whatever. But as things went on, he was more like, oh, you know, Amesh does his own stuff, and we supportive of him.
Yeah, that was very interesting to when you said Matif sees himself as like the very fatherly figure for Amesh. But like he's just actually like you just really can't really control Amesh. It's just like you said, he just kind of does whatever he wants, and for him that's, you know, worked out for him because even if he goes to jail or whatever, he's just happy doing whatever he wants to do.
I like Amesh. He's great.
I'm definitely expecting to see him in Guardians. I'm expecting him to show up for sure. And I guess just as a real quick plug-in for Guardians, there has been some overlap with um, with some of like the consequences for our group. Some of them have raised their head in Guardians, which is really cool. And I'm excited to see how they cross over even more.
I haven't been keeping up with Guardians, unfortunately.
So Amesh. So going back to him, with him and Matif, right? Did Matif? Because I'm kind of seeing like some similarities between, and this might just be me, but with both Lucy and Amesh, I don't really think Matif had as much control over them as they did with the rest of the party. But it seems like Amesh wasn't so much putting the rest of the party into danger. And I think that's why Matif cozied up to him a little bit more. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so to go off of that, Lucy and his personality, right? So what he's doing right now isn't like, although there is urgency to it and it is based on some of the circumstances, that's also just like his personality, like the way he acts. And I don't see Lucy's personality changing anytime soon. And I think this once again goes back to like, will they learn to just accept each other? Or will it always just be like a never ending battle between the two?
I think that's a very good question. I think that has part to do with you as well.
Mhm.
Because I am only one player in this game of two. And if I had to guess, Matif is willing to forgive and forget. It's gonna take a lot. But he has gotten to that point in his like character development where he has been like, okay, people will make mistakes and people are fallible. And I will do everything that I can, but some like people are still going to accidentally choose the wrong thing, right? And I'm here to make it right. And so I think if Lucy and Matif had a heart-to-heart and were like, yeah, we fucked up in the past and we were terrible to each other, but going forward we have to be a team, I think that would change his perspective on Lucy quite a bit.
You think it would break Matif's heart if Lucy told him that he's kind of low on his list of priorities now?
No, because I think personal growth and development is not one of the highest priorities Matif has either. It happens, but it's not something he's like actively.
Mhm. Just because like at least when I'm going through Lucy's head, Matif doesn't really enter his mind when he thinks about the consequences. Like, oh, how would Matif react to this? Yeah.
I will say the same about Lucy.
Okay. It doesn't bother Matif until the consequences show up, I guess.
Yes.
And so what were we going to talk about something after going through the characters?
Yeah, do you think we have enough time or should we have a second episode?
So I just have to be done by 45.
Okay.
Yeah, so whatever you think.
Um,
Obviously, if Merlin has anything to do.
I. Okay. Um. Okay. I think if we really wanted to get into it, that we should do a second episode where we go through different life that I think have had strong things with him. We can talk about Jesus Christ, I'm not kidding. Dog, stop it, stop.
I was like, dog, who's that?
Sorry, it's my dog.
It's all good.
Woogie, woogie, woogie. Have you ever seen? Wait. Side thing. Have you ever seen that Vine where you're my dad? Woogie, woogie, woogie.
I have never used Vine before.
Oh my god. Okay.
I'm a very well. I don't use social media, other than for Mr. Usubeni Yume.
Should we do a couple of predictions for the next?
Yes, let's do that.
Because we did kind of start that a little bit, like saying about our fight and stuff. But since we only have a little bit of time, I don't want to get into some really heavy, fun stuff. If we've only got a short period. Or we could talk about creating the character of Matif in a mechanical sense. Which do you
let's yeah, let's go with predictions and then we'll see where we are from there.
Okay.
Who would like to go first? Would you like to go first?
You go ahead, and then I'll tell you anything that hasn't come up.
Okay. So, as far as I know, Matif is not aware of what Lucy's trying to do. The only ones who are really aware at this point, I believe, are Emeth and Rowan, because Rowan was there when Emeth asked about it. But as far as I know, Matif is not aware that Lucy is trying to build not build, but create like another crew of people that will kind of like work with him. And I have yet to ask Merlin, but since Lucy paid for the ship, he's going to ask if Leaf is willing to rename it. But Lucy is essentially going to be starting his own little mercenary group, and based on how Matif has seen Lucy in the past, I'm not sure if Matif would be okay with that, and I would think that might be another catalyst that pushes that fight that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, what are you trying to do, right?
It depends on how you go about it, right? So, dog, stop it! So if you went about it by getting, like, sleaziest, like, you know, cheapest guys that you could, and then we had to be with them, Matif would be like, hell no. This dumb. Why are you doing this to us? Right? And he would put it like that. Why are you doing this to us? Without asking anybody else how they felt about it. But I think if you went about it and we had like strong crew, like normal people, I think he's kind of up for that idea. Like he wants that sense of what he had before, you know?
So the only thing I will add to that is that they're not necessarily going to be with us. They're going to be doing things that Lucy tells them to do.
And I'm going to be privy of this, or I'm not going to be privy of this.
It depends on if he asks. Because the only one who's asked so far is Emeth, and Rowan happened to be there at the same time. And as far as I know, Matif knows nothing about this, or even any intention of doing so.
I think that's going to be an argument, but I don't think it's going to come to like a full blown like what happened earlier, like with like the storm and the lightning and almost fighting physically. If that were to happen, if you figure it out, I think he'd be like, you can't put yourself above like what we're doing as a group. Like, this is about, and he would get super hypocritical and be like, this is about saving the world. You can't put, you know, your own agenda in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I think there's a lot of fights still. I remember Merlin saying that the first arc of the campaign was kind of based around him and Luke fighting. And I think we're still gonna have a lot of that with pushing the characters. I'm interested to see, here's my prediction. I'm interested to see if we break off and then come back. Because I feel like that's kind of where we're at now. That we're almost in like that One Piece Luffy time skip right after Ace dies. Oh, sorry. Spoilers. Sorry about that. I mean, the anime's been like, I'm not feel bad about that, but because like it almost feels like we all have our own to do. And like Matif does not want the party split like at all, and so like he'll do anything, including manipulating, to keep the characters together. But it almost feels like that's what we're doing because, you know, like you were saying earlier, everyone's got their own of things that they're doing right now. I predict that Matif will have to literally manipulate people. Okay.
So, just jumping on that real quick about me. Sorry, Melon here. About me building the first arc of the campaign around you guys, your relationship. If I'm completely honest, I thought you two would have resolved it by this point. I did not expect you guys to still be having issues. Yeah. So it's good for me because it gives me an easy tool to ramp up drama. Tension. So, like, don't get me wrong, please. Makes my life easy. But I didn't expect you guys to still be as have as much animosity towards each other as you did before.
How did you think we would solve it, if I can ask?
I thought, if I'm completely honest, Lucy still needs to get his shit together. Matif is kind of on the path I expected him to be on. Lucy, not so much. I thought Lucy would. Lucy got so close to getting his shit together as well. And then he had that meeting with the headmaster and was like, nah, fuck that shit. I'm back on my old ways. And I was like, ah, damn. So, and I don't know if that's something, maybe I said something wrong. Maybe. But if not, either way, still very on brand. But I expected him to have sorted it out by this point. But yeah, we'll see where things go from here.
Interesting. And you say wrong like it's bad that Lucy hasn't gotten his shit.
No,
I feel like
it's not bad.
Yeah.
Like it's just I had planned for other stuff, but yeah, so it's not bad. It's just the way the character is. That's not like I'm not gonna say that's bad. It's just when I was, making some notes about where I wanted things to go, I thought he'd be in a very different place by this point. So yeah, it's me.
Never trust in the, well, not never, but don't put trust in the man named Lucifer Burns.
That is very true.
And so going back to predictions, and I don't know if this is necessarily a prediction, but as we're nearing episode 25, and then you mentioned like a time skip, I wonder if, I was just thinking just right now, like it would be kind of cool if, like episode 25 led to like and in between 25 and 26 there was like a 3-month, kind of like time skip, so it's not too long but enough time for them to like um, do a little bit of personal like journeying.
You want us to level up?
The characters. Yes, that's part of it. Because I'm very curious because obviously this is my first time playing D&D, so I am kind of curious on what like this high level play looks like. But besides that, I would kind of like to see how the group fares, right? Because there are some groups that after an absence from each other, they drift apart, but then there are some groups where absence only makes them closer. And obviously because it's a D&D game, most of the time we're together, right? And so I'm very curious to see what it looks like. Like, are they really like equals together in a group, or are they becoming like dependent on each other? And that's something that I would like to see. Like, is it an actual bond that they have, or is it just a bond of circumstance in a way?
So I will say, I do not expect a time skip for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see one in the near future. There might be a time where it comes to that, but I feel like there are too many pressing issues for a time skip to occur. Like the stuff with Dante, you guys, going to find the violin. Like, there's just too many pressing tasks at the moment. If you guys resolve those, maybe. But yeah.
No, we're forcing you to do a time skip right fucking
right now. All right, Dante.
We want to level up.
Dante goes evil. Matif becomes a
Everybody dies.
ghost.
In my prediction.
Lucifer dies. That's my.
Yeah, but but that's something I'm also curious about. Like, what is this group really made of? Right. And I think we have yet to be really tested on that, because we've had like personal kind of struggles with the group, but I don't think it's really come down to it yet where every single person in the group has an issue, or at least the majority of people, because generally it's only been like 1 or 2 arguing within the group. Because me personally, I don't think that the group is really that close yet, and maybe you see it differently, but I don't see them as that close yet. I feel like there can still be some things that might be kind of small that would still divide the group. Yeah, and I would say that, speaking from my character, I think he's still thinking kind of the same way. Like, he would definitely like it to. He would definitely like for things to be the way that they currently are. But I also think that he's aware that just thinking that way is kind of being hopeful, and that things will always just stay the same. Yeah.
For
Do you have any
me,
thoughts on that?
yeah, it's the opposite, because Matif has nothing else, right? No one else to go to, nothing else to do, right? So if the group were to split up, I feel like you very lost. And I was thinking about this time skip, even if it does happen later, that I don't think he wants to be alone. I think he would pick someone to do the time skip with, because he does have that like attachment style where he just needs to be around the person. Like if he's feels so like lost. And what I immediately thought of was Dante. I feel like he would be with Dante.
I feel like those two really do mix well together. I don't know what it is that I like about it, but I do like their interactions.
You mean the time that we went on a tour around the city?
Yeah. And then it's just like, how do I put this? It's just it contrasts from a lot of the normal interactions. It's just a nice contrast where it isn't necessarily I guess they're just more lighthearted, right? Because a lot of the interactions are usually heavy or emotional, or have to deal with something big. But with them, they're just kind of like enjoying this little slice of life, just hanging out, and I just think it's a cool contrast. Any more predictions?
I have well, I'll wait for the Lucy episode.
Lucy episode.
Yeah, say it now.
Yeah. Say it now. I have a prediction about Lucy. Well, I have a question before I make the.
Go ahead.
What is Lucy's relationship with Rowan and Emeth right now?
So with Rowan, he saw, like what Merlin mentioned, he saw like this passing this visage of Eve on Rowan, and he hasn't brought it up to her yet. And I think he's still trying to determine what that was, like whether it's just him kind of projecting her memory onto her, or whether it's something more based on like the pink spark that he experienced in the prison. So Lucy does I don't know if sympathize is the right word, but when he confronted her about like why she's really here, like what is she looking for, he kind of understood her in the way when she mentioned that she was just kind of lost and didn't really know what to do. He related to what she said. But in terms of like anything past that, he's still trying to figure it out because he's not sure, and he doesn't want to make any rash mistakes, because rash mistakes is what caused Eve to not be there in the first place. So he's definitely being a little bit more careful with that because he's made that mistake in the past. And then when it comes to Emeth, it's another one of those things where Lucy does like her, but he doesn't feel like he's not necessarily good enough. But he knows he's not really in the, I guess, the mindset of having a deeper relationship. Like he probably wants to, but he definitely knows that he's not. Because as it was kind of revealed in the Two Truths One Lie, whatever episode that we did that, is that Eve is the only person he's ever been with, um, sexually and in a relationship. So he's not the type to, I guess, to have flings or true relationships with. He's the type of person who can only really get into like very deep relationships with, and he knows that he doesn't have the capacity to do that with Emmett at the moment, even if he might like to. But I guess we'll see how that goes with Emmett, Rowan, and Eve to see how they all intersect with each other. And what he's going to do when that happens, I have no idea yet. So yeah, that's my spiel on M and Rowan and Eve for now.
Okay, because my prediction, and this one hasn't changed, is first of all you'll have to pick one of them at some point, and I don't mean like romantically. At some point there's going to be some like they're both hanging in cages, and the evil villain can only have one, and then you've got to pick one. By the way, I love those. I love those especially when afterwards, neither of them die. It's just the fact that emotional scarring of like, I did get picked. And they could have chosen me, and I
have done that to. I've done that to Astrid before, and I made her cry, like full out bawling tears. Yeah.
No.
I'm an evil DM.
But yeah. Oh, now I feel bad.
I will do it to the
I
both
can
of
take
you.
it. I can take it.
Really, you almost cried when you died last time.
Yeah, well, that's because I was giving you made my world more colorful speech.
That is very true.
Oh, that was adorable, by the way.
Thanks.
But yeah, I definitely think not the cage thing specifically, but I think you'll definitely have a between them at some point. Oh, Windham's here. Hi, Windham. And I think that Emmett and you are gonna have a fight about your romantic, like what that means. I feel like right now, and maybe I'm looking in a little bit too much, but like with Emmett and Matif's talk in Crow's Nest, she's like worried about how her mom was saying that like, caring is a bad thing, and so I feel like that's something that is on her mind, and I'm not going to talk to Astrid. If she doesn't see the episode, maybe she'll come on her own. But I think there's a conversation about relationship.
Yeah, and kind of going back to that, not Astrid. Emmett did ask Lucy about that on the ship, and then Lucy didn't really give her a direct response, but he did like recite a poem and kissed her. But yeah, I forget. Were you there for that one?
I might have been gone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but she asked like, "What is this?" And Lucy kind of responded like, it's hard to say. And he's been in like, he's had one relationship before, and it didn't really work out well for multiple reasons. But he did give her a poem, and they kissed. But then Emmett kind of like, she kissed him back, but she, I guess, was flustered after, and she just kind of like walked away. So there is like some confirmation between the two, but it's still not definite. So that happened, and then going back to the making a choice thing that you mentioned before, that's one of the things that Lucy has had to do in the past, right? Is make a choice. But what he feels is different now, right? Is this sapphire that's in his chest, right? Because now it's not necessarily just, Route 1 or Route 2, Railroad A or Railroad B. In his head, there's now always a third choice because of the sapphire in his chest.
Hmm.
And like I mentioned before, even if that third choice comes to his own detriment, like it's still a third choice where he can possibly not just save one or the other, but save both. So that's why how do I put this? But I guess that's why there's a little bit more, not really hope in Lucy, but now he feels like he does have some power and urgency in the world now, instead of just being just a regular soldier.
I know we only have 1 minute, so I'm gonna put a couple of off the cuff predictions out there. First of all, I believe that I believe Matif Spirit Walker. I think after the talk last time, he's working towards picking that. So, but I do believe that the Spirit Walker is going to have some consequence. That one is not a hard one to see. I mean, come on. This is how Dungeons and Dragons works.
Read the fine terms and conditions.
They're unforeseen circumstances.
Print. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's
and
anything
he's not
you've
a deals
learned,
broker.
if there's anything you've learned from Sundaresh.
And I oh god, I forgot my second one. So I believe, and this one is Merlin, close your ears. You're not listening. But I believe that in my backstory, when someone took out our ship, that it was a request by someone specifically that our entire crew be taken out and our ship be sunk, and like to make sure that something either on the ship or on the ship was killed specifically because of whatever hullabaloo, but I believe that person is still, like, once they figure out that there was a survivor from that ship, which they might now because the Nala, the ship that took him down, their crew now saw Matif on the shore trying to attack them. And so I think this mysterious benefactor, whoever it is, who tried to take out their entire crew, now knowing that one of them survived, is going to be coming after Matif personally. So.
And then going off my other off-the-cuff prediction. So it seems like there's been a lot of tie-in with the crew that destroyed Matif's ship, because, and I don't know if this is exactly related, but in Guardians, there's also another pirate who had a dream about a large figure sinking his ship and then going down. I don't know if that's related, but I think it definitely well could be, especially since there's tie-ins with Emmett's backstory and Delnoa being the old captain of that ship. And I definitely think there might be some tie-in with Eve in that ship too, since when she was supposedly found, she was on that ship. So yeah, I think there's a lot of tie-in, a lot of conspiracy thinking we could do with that.
Oh yeah, I did
But
want to
I'm
ask.
excited to see how that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
How much did that fuck you up, Pastel? Finding out that Delnoa was the captain of the Nala.
Real fucking, so, I don't think you knew, did I tell anybody that, for the next week, I would use Del Noah as an insult? That entire week. Like, instead of being like, oh, Jesus, I'd be like, oh, Del Noah, and like, my what the is going on, and I'm like, you'll figure it out, it's fine. But yeah, that was a fucking spicy moment. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. There will be a second episode on Matif where we go through some of the trauma that he has. That one might be a little bit shorter though, since we did go through a lot of stuff today. So without further ado, we should plug ourselves. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You go first since I went first last time.
Okay. Hi, my name is Pastel Snake on Twitch and Twitter. I do mostly horror game content, description, Poppy's Playtime, and I'm really excited to start Security Breach. Next Wednesday, make sure to be there because I'm going to be having a sponsored stream at 6 p.m. CT, Central Daylight Time. And we will be playing Security, so make sure to check that out.
Definitely going to be there, supporting that stream, playing some mobile games to help you out.
It'll be Raid Shadow Legends. Very excited.
And then so, going to me, my name is Usubeni Yume. I'm thinking of what content to release next, in addition to the Lucy's origin stories, which you can find on my Patreon. But I'm looking for other projects to work on. So if you want to keep updated on that and see my progress on those things, you can find my Twitter. You can find me on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Twitch, on Ko-fi, and on Patreon. All those. And yeah, I look forward to releasing new stuff and finding some new fans, if I have any. And that's all it for me.
Does our talking book also want to plug themselves?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'm plugging you anyway. Anyway, Merlin's Twitch is in the chat. He's amazing. Go watch him. And yeah.
Thank you everyone for coming today. We hope to see you this Saturday for another episode of Heralds. Following the Stone Giant and the, what do we call it, raunchy? Or the very lewd episode. The very lewd last episode. And I imagine things will take quite a different mood and turn in the next episode. But please look forward to it. You can catch us on this channel, VTuber Tabletop. Also check out our Discord to hang out with us and ask us questions and whatnot. Share any fan art you may have as well. Yeah, and then we'll see you this Saturday.
Bye.
Bye everyone.